We've got Microsoft earnings, we've got HoloLens data, and we've got Game Pass data. It's a data-filled episode. Happy Friday, friends! What a week! Somehow the week has just blown by. It has blown by, but it's been a good week. Hopefully you had a wonderful week. Everybody dropped their earnings. So there's some data in there. We got some Game Pass, we got some Phil interviews, we got Call of Duty dropping today. So hopefully you had a wonderful week, and let's just dive in. So the big news, pretty much across the industry, is not Elon buying the bird site, which he did, is that every company dropped their earnings. And now the economy, if you're not aware, is sort of like walking on eggshells. Nobody really knows, are we heading towards the R word, or are we just whatever? And so earnings is a good forecast. It's like, hey, what's going on in the economy? Now, at a high level, every major company is still making a lot of money. They just might be making some less money. So let's dive in here. Microsoft reported earnings this week with revenues of $50.1 billion. That's an increase of about 11%. Now, their net income of $17.6 billion, which is the money that they can effectively put into their bank account, assuming everybody pays their bills. Everyone likes to... I understand the accounting of it. People can be like, no, that's not actually the amount of money that they could put into their bank account. That depends on cash flow and if people are paying their bills, if they don't pay. Either way, Microsoft's made about $17 billion, which is a decrease of about 14%. And that sort of grabbed the headlines like, ooh, they made less money than they did a year ago. So, but they still made $17.6 billion. I mean, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of dollars, a lot of mini fridges. You don't need many of those quarters to be able to afford an Activision, which, by the way, Microsoft did not talk about really at all during their earnings call. I looked for it all over the place. Didn't really see anything. Office consumer products are up to 61.3 million subscribers. That is a very healthy number. LinkedIn revenue grew 17%. The big one that is worth pointing out is that Windows OEM revenue dropped 15%. Now, the pandemic party is over, and I'm not saying the pandemic is over. That's definitely not what I'm saying. But from a company's being able to extrapolate value from it, which is what happened during the past 24 months or so, that has come and gone, especially in the PC space. It's very clear that when everybody started working from home, that shift to buy PCs really got pushed forward because Microsoft was reporting it was something like 2%, then 11%, then like 25%, something crazy like that percentage of OEM revenue growth. And now people just aren't buying PCs because they bought them all in the past 2 years. And so I expect we're going to see PC numbers really be struggling here for a while. And that's just the natural cycle. The laptops, the desktops, they're in a mature state. This is not a growth industry for Microsoft. It's not a growth industry really for honestly anybody at this point in the product's life cycle. It's stable, and that's just what it's going to be. And so that is, we also saw, I think it was Seagate reported that their earnings were down quite a bit as well. Because again, storage, PC, like that whole industry that's related to the PC is going to start to slow here a little bit because hardware components aren't needed. And it looks like the bottlenecks are starting to ease up quite a bit in that space. And so either way, the OEM space is going to be tight for a while, I would expect. Xbox content and services revenue decreased about 3%, give or take, and devices revenue, which is Microsoft's service line of business, increased about 2%. More importantly, or more interestingly at least to him, GitHub hit $1 billion in annual reoccurring revenue, which is a really big deal for GitHub. And also, I'd like to point out too that LinkedIn revenue increased 17%. The reason why I pull these two out is that these two were acquisitions by Microsoft, big acquisitions, right? LinkedIn was like $26.2 billion or something like that. And it's very clear that Microsoft has bought these products and hasn't destroyed them, which is very common in large companies where they acquire another large company and they kind of just destroy the culture and everything else that's going on. But it looks like LinkedIn and GitHub are able to continue to run pretty well. And now, granted, there are definitely skeletons in Microsoft's historical closet, things like Skype and some other ones, Aquantive, but those were all under different leadership. And now that Satya has bought LinkedIn and GitHub, it seems like they can actually do pretty well with their large acquisitions. So maybe Activision actually could be a pretty good thing. I think most of us think it will. So other earnings across the industry, you had Amazon, they missed, but they still had a net income of $2.9 billion, I believe, on revenues of $127 billion. They are not going underwater. Pretty much Meta got destroyed because it keeps investing into its metaverse. I think Phil Spencer said it pretty well. If it doesn't exist in a 2D world, then doesn't really stand a chance, and nobody wants to sit more and more meetings or anything else like that. I don't know. The metaverse is Zuckerberg's big bet for the future of Facebook, and a lot of people just don't believe in it. And I'm one of those. I'm not saying the metaverse won't ever be a thing. I don't know if it's going to be Facebook's thing. And there's a lot of times where they're trying to pioneer some new technology, and a lot of times those pioneers get stabbed in the back. Microsoft has a lot of history of being the first to market with it. Look at HoloLens as an example, and now they pretty much never get brought up when things like Oculus products get brought up and everything else. So we'll see. Zuck says that they're going to spend more money on investing in the metaverse, and their net income was cut in half this past quarter. And so basically the entire industry was kind of, we went through an insane period that I think will be reflected on in many years, and several years to come, of just insane growth for the top tech players, realistically. I mean, we talked about it on this podcast everywhere. It was, hey, Microsoft report record revenues, Apple, Facebook, Google just exploding. And now all of a sudden, because the economy and interest rates and everything else, everything's cooling off quite a bit. And that explosive growth that we saw for year after year, I think that's going to be over for a while as well. But basically, everybody reported like okay-ish earnings. Nobody really knocked it out of the park. Apple is the only one who really bucked the trend a little bit. And theirs was pretty healthy, and that's just kind of what Apple does. And now they're also shoving ads into the App Store, like gambling apps, and so they had a little negative publicity this week. And yeah, but I think the industry is, we're just seeing things starting to cool off quite a bit. Back on the Windows side, Microsoft released a new version, a new insider build, and this has a new phone link update. So for specific Samsung phones, it makes it way easier to tap into your phone's hotspot, just way easier. We've all gone through those hurdles, and so this latest update makes that process, I wouldn't even say a little bit better, just quite a bit better, but it's only for specific Samsung devices, so you can instantly access your phone hotspot through this link now, if, again, you have the right hardware. Microsoft also brought its OneNote desktop app to the Microsoft Store, which also means we're seeing the sunsetting of the OneNote UWP app, which is really, like, I know I was never the biggest fan of UWP and what Microsoft was trying to do, but the OneNote UWP was the castle on the hill. It was the beacon, the lighthouse. It was the proof of what UWP could do, and now it's getting old yellered, and so... yeah, and the one that they brought to the store isn't the best, the UI isn't the greatest, so yeah. A little bit of interesting data on the HoloLens side is that industry watchdog or company International Data Corp is reporting that Microsoft has sold around 300,000 units of HoloLens. And honestly, folks, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Because on one hand, 300,000 HoloLenses is kind of an interesting, really interesting number if you think about it. Because again, it's only for enterprise customers. So those are enterprise contracts. Those are big money value deals, more than likely. They're not selling to consumer. On the other hand, the HoloLens has been around for a while and they've only sold 300,000. So it's you go back and forth, like, is it, what's going on? And then of course you can't ignore the Army contract, which Microsoft is currently working through, and there's been a lot of negative publicity around that, the Army not liking it, the soldiers getting dizzy and headaches and that sort of thing. And that contract is worth like $20-some billion, and that would be about 120,000 additional units. So I hope Microsoft continues to push forward with the HoloLens. I think they had a massive advantage, and hopefully that they can continue to invest in that area. But, Alex Kipman's gone, and there's been a lot of rumors that, like, the team behind it is not exactly fully staffed anymore, if that makes sense. Also, rounding out this week, Microsoft finally is shipping and releasing and making available, whatever words you want to use, the Windows Development Kit. This is the previously, if I could enunciate, Project Volterra for $599. So this thing looks like a Mac Mini. Does not have Mac Mini like performance, but it is Windows on ARM. It is a nice looking box. If you haven't seen it, the best way I can describe it as somebody who has not, if you take the bottom half of a Surface Studio, make it matte black, add some ports, and make it an ARM device, that's it. Now there's no screen. This is basically just the bottom. My kind of question is like, did they just take the guts out of the Surface Pro 9 ARM version and just put that in a nice little neat little box and call it a day? They very well might have, my friends, because that would make a lot of sense and they get some efficiency. And why build two different devices when you already got a small form factor board like that? So on to the gaming news of the week. Amazon doing some interesting stuff, though. Amazon has Fire TV, and they're adding Luna and Twitch streaming services directly to that. I'm surprised it took this long, but especially the Luna front makes a lot of sense. Twitch, obviously, is Amazon owned as well, and so getting more eyeballs on that and putting it directly on their Fire TV interface just kind of makes sense. Big news, at least for me, is Age of Empires 2 Definitive Edition and Age of Empires 4 are coming to Xbox consoles next year. I am honestly probably more excited about Age 2 than maybe Age 4, just because I played a ton of Age of Empires 2, and that's That was one of the games I grew up on. Like Age 2 and Command and Conquer Red Alert 2 were played significantly by me. So yes, by me. So a little bit of numbers coming out of Microsoft this week related to Game Pass. Game Pass PC was up 159% year over year, showing some good success for Microsoft there. And Phil Spencer also says that Game Pass they're targeting revenues of 15 to 20% of the overall value or the overall revenue of Xbox. So if you take Xbox revenue, Game Pass is likely somewhere in the 15 to 20% according to Phil Spencer. He said that during a Wall Street Journal live event. Game Pass prices are also likely coming too from Phil Spencer, which this is not a surprise. I absolutely expect that when Microsoft closes that $70 billion acquisition, they're going to be raising Game Pass pricing. Now, if they do it in conjunction with Call of Duty lands inside of Game Pass, I think they'll probably be fine. And if I had to guess, I bet they raise it $5 a month. That would be my guess, that they'd land it. And then Game Pass Ultimate goes up to $19.99. I also wouldn't be surprised if that's when they potentially make the shift away and say, like, look, Xbox Live Gold is just going away. Like, if they're going to do it, that's when, in my opinion, they should do it. Now, there'll be some people pushing back, especially internally, and be like, look, there's a lot of chaos right now. We just closed this thing. People are wondering what's going on. We shouldn't send all these different mixed messages. But I think it's the perfect time to clean everything up. Microsoft just comes out and says, look, if you want the basics, it's $14.99. If you want the whole kit and caboodle, it's $20 a month. And that's just the way that it is. That is our service going forward. Xbox Live Gold is being rolled into whatever the basic is now at $14.99. And that's it. Game over. And nice, clean, easy, and understood. And maybe that's what they're doing, but that's fully kind of what I expect. And then also big personal news, and this is not just impacting me. Modern Warfare 2 Call of Duty, the new one, is out today. I would be lying if I haven't said I already played it a little bit, because it's a game I've been looking forward to. Vanguard was trash, and I'm just so happy we don't have to use World War II weapons anymore for my favorite online multiplayer shooter. And so that is out now, and I'm sure everybody in the world probably already knew that, but just wrapping it up. Just a handful of questions in this week. I was way late with the thread, but I appreciate the questions. Always my favorite part, my friends. Migi comes in and says, what will be the new price for every Game Pass tier? Do you think the price increase will affect other Microsoft areas like Office or Microsoft 365? I don't think it'll impact other areas, but I definitely, like I just previously mentioned, I think every tier goes up $5, and I would not be shocked if Xbox Live Gold officially goes away. Microsoft has been moving away from it for a while. They even renamed it the Xbox Network, and they do promote it, but they don't really push it, if that makes sense. And so I think they just go to Game Pass and Game Pass Ultimate, and if you want to play online, you just need the basic tier of Game Pass, and I think that's going to be the massive transition. And Mr. PKI wrapping it up this week, he says, ending question for the week, is anyone actually buying Project Volterra devices? Are ARM-based apps actually in demand on Windows? Well, I know. So I got to take a step back, because my purview of the Twitter universe and the Microsoft universe is much more focused on people who would actually be buying these. I know multiple people who have bought this. There's one developer who bought roughly 20 of them for some of their infrastructure work and related to virtualization and other things. That being said, it's a dev kit. We don't actually know. We will never know how many devices these Microsoft actually sells unless it honestly leaks. I suspect that they will sell through just out of curiosity. Remember, there was also an earlier one this year. It was like directly from Qualcomm. It was like $300-400 if I remember. I can't even remember. Little puck-sized device. I think that this device will sell better. My biggest challenge with all of this is that Project Volterra would have been great in 2013. Why did it take until 2022 to get a device like this out into market? And why does Microsoft feel like Windows on ARM just feels like it's inching along, whereas Apple is obviously taking big leaps, but they're also forcing the hand because they're converting their entire portfolio over to ARM. Unlike Microsoft, who's just saying it's a nice accessory. It's pretty much the cloud gaming of the hardware world for Microsoft, right? Cloud gaming isn't a feature, or isn't a product, it's a feature. ARM isn't really a product, it's a feature at this point. And so we aren't really seeing that primary device-driven initiative yet from Microsoft. That being said, this is a step in the right direction. That also being said, with 17 different qualifiers, it should have happened a while ago, is where it's at. So there you go, my friends. I told you this would be a little bit shorter of one, mostly because I was way late with the questions. Also, I really want to go play Call of Duty. And so hopefully everybody had a wonderful week. We got a lot more on the horizon. I think next couple weeks are going to continue to be interesting. We are steamrolling hot into the holiday shopping season. I'm still waiting to see if Microsoft does anything kind of tricky, if you will, with their Xbox tiers to try to drive more demand this holiday shopping season. Phil already said they have no intention to raise pricing this holiday season, but it looks like that might be happening in the years ahead. So if you're planning on picking up one of these things, maybe it may not be a bad time, but we'll see. We will wait and see. And as always, everybody, thanks for subscribing. Thanks for tuning in. We're about to hit 50,000 subs on YouTube, and that's a major milestone. And so, yeah, have yourselves a wonderful weekend. Play safe, play fair, whatever. Enjoy your Call of Duties, and we'll catch all of you right back here.